Hello 4330. In this video we're going to talk about how you can use graphics to support ELLs. These supports are just in addition to the ones we've talked about previously in class, specifically ones that activate the senses like gestures and manipulatives. So why bother using graphics and visual? Lectures and pencil and paper activities centered on a text are very, very difficult for your English language learners. You want to include as many supplementary materials as possible to enhance meaning and clarify confusing concepts to make lessons more relevant. Think of this from the perspective of you learning another language. If I asked you to learn Korean and all I gave you was a text and a pencil, would you be able to read what I gave you? Graphics and visuals help build background knowledge and help the student make connections. They make abstract concepts more concrete. They make learning more meaningful, and they make instruction more comprehensible, which is our ultimate aim. We've talked about word walls in the past. You can have manipulative word walls where students go and actually get the words off of the wall and can use them at their desk and then put them back. The word wall in this picture is color-coded: text features, text structure, functional reading, text reliability, and credibility. It serves as a visual for the students. We all know that pictures are very helpful for learners. This poster is an example of sequencing done in two different exercises. Notice that the sequencing is going to help you figure out all of the parts that will help all of your students, not just your English language learners, but this will also help you figure out how to talk about the movement that you want the students to do. Visuals like photographs, illustrations, websites, magazines, book pages, all of that is going to be super helpful to your English language learner. Timelines are something that is super helpful because numbers are often one of the easiest things for your English language learners to pick up on. A timeline that has dates, descriptions, and photos is going to be super beneficial to your English language learner. We've talked about graphic organizers before. Those count as a graphic. They help split big ideas into smaller, more manageable parts, and they also help you use the vocabulary that you want your English language learners to acquire. Multimedia is one we haven't talked about yet. That basically means that it has more than one medium, like it's going to combine audio with pictures and illustrations, also with music and that kind of thing. So this can include tape recordings, which we typically have which are typically digital now, videos, DVDs, podcasts, MP3s, audiobooks, and the like. Audible.com is offering free audiobooks right now while everybody is isolated at home. So that's a great tool for you if you like audiobooks, but you can also get some stuff to use in your lesson plans for free right now. We've talked about anchor charts before. These are the ones that anchor your learning. You can build them during the class, or if it's something you're going to refer to over and over and over again, you can make it before the class. You can laminate them if you're going to use them every single year. But these are something that go on the wall. We keep it on the wall as long as we're learning this, and we can pull these anchor charts back out anytime we need to remind students of an important concept. Foldables serve as both a manipulative and visual. You guys are familiar with foldables. You can find them all over the web. Teachers Pay Teachers has free ones. Some of them you have to pay for, and of course you're always welcome to make your own by hand if you want to. So for week 10, your task is to write a lesson plan that follows the sequence you started with your first lesson plan. So just pretend like this is day 2 of the unit that I've started. We're going to be writing this lesson plan specifically for an intermediate ELL. So remember that this student is going to need a lot of support, Her name is Veda. She's a student from Turkey. She's been in the US for the past 18 months. She's intermediate across the board, reading, writing, listening, and speaking. She has had formal schooling, and she had 2 years of basic English classes while she was in Turkey. So she has the ability to seek clarification when listening, and she can identify keywords and phrases necessary to understand a general meaning. She expresses herself in simple messages using short sentences, but she's going to hesitate for long periods of time because she has to think about the meaning. She thinks about it in Turkish first, and then she translates it to English, and then she says it to you. She also exhibits an emerging understanding of English grammar, that there's a noun and a verb in every sentence, but she's going to have some trouble with verb tenses, prepositions. She might flip her adjectives here and there, that kind of thing. She can write in short sentences that feature simple, concrete English used frequently in class. So some of it may sound repetitive. It's going to be the same language that you use. She's not going to create a lot of words. She's not going to put together a lot of words on her own. It's going to be stuff that she's heard before. She has limited comprehension with grade level texts that are in English, but she does very well with stories that include predictable storylines, like your fairy tales kind of thing, highly familiar topics. She's good with high frequency vocabulary, short, simple sentences, and visual and linguistic support. So we're really going to focus on that visual support with this lesson plan. With beginner and intermediate ELLs, I want to see those supports sprinkled throughout the entire lesson plan. This lesson requires you to make graphic or visual support for your English language learner. That will get submitted to a separate Dropbox. In addition, you can include any other type of support for your English language learner. I want you to highlight each place you provide support. That way you can see if it is sprinkled throughout or if you've just got it isolated to one activity. When you look at your lesson and you've got all those supports highlighted, make sure there's one for each activity. Not just at the beginning, not just at the end, not just here in the middle, it's all over. I want to remind you to include a narration for your modeling. You're going to lose points if you simply say something like, model how to throw a ball. When you do that, you're not using the language that the students need to understand what it is you're doing. Assume you're starting from scratch and your students don't know how to do what it is that you're teaching them. So I want you to use the think aloud strategy and talk through every step. It may look something like this. First, I have to pay attention to where my fingers go on the ball. I'm going to wrap my index finger and middle finger along the ball's seam, like this. See how my thumb is tucked underneath? Then I'm going to position my front foot in the direction I want to throw. And that's enough for you to do. It gives me a sample of how you're going to talk to your students, and it lets you think through how you would explain things to your students who have not done something that you are very, very familiar with. Writing up the narrative is going to help you figure this out before you get in front of your students. Because once you're in front of those students, it gets a little tricky to break everything down to their level. Remember that you want to assess your students throughout. Now, this isn't quizzes, this isn't testing. We're talking about those informal assessments. So we don't want to ask yes/no questions because we've talked about this in class before. If we ask a yes/no question, our students usually go, yeah, I understand, especially your English language learners. You need to have them show you in one way or another, like explaining the concept. You especially want to check in on your ELLs and have them explain the concept by either pointing to things and speaking the word or using something like sentence stems, talking about the manipulatives they have, that kind of thing. So include places in your lesson plan where you can do that and where you can walk around and give feedback to all of your students so that you can check in on them. I want you to pace your lesson plan according to the development level, and that includes the development level of students in terms of their language acquisition. Remember that typically, not in special circumstances like we're in right now, students are at school, or sorry, students in Texas are at school for 7 hours a day. And when we hit that junior high and high school, we are typically making them sit for long periods of time all day long. That's hard for you. That's super hard for junior high and high school students. So don't assume that you can just assign something for 30 minutes and they're all going to sit there and do it for you. If you would get bored with an activity, your students are going to get bored with it too. So consider how long they can focus at any given age. The younger they are, the smaller amount of time that they will focus for you. In a second, I'm going to show you my sample lesson with graphics support, and you'll see that I'm using support in every single activity. This is a must with beginners and intermediates. I have all of these written into the lesson plan. I front load the vocabulary, I use anchor charts, I use gestures, I break apart words, I have my students talk with a shoulder partner, but it has to be somebody who is a higher level than them, because a beginner paired with a beginner, there's not going to be any language acquisition going on. I'm going to highlight keywords and phrases in the text that they are reading. I provide them with sentence stems so that they can write about and talk about what we're doing. I read aloud. I use a graphic organizer. This time it's a chart, and I provide them with a set of illustrations. The ones that are in blue would qualify as the visual or graphic support. Okay, so let's take a quick peek at my lesson plan. This one is written for 9th grade English 1. You guys know the TEAC. You know you're really good at writing those content objectives. You are good at writing the language objectives. Make sure you're including the type of support that the student needs to achieve that language objective. You guys have no problem with key vocabulary. You're good at materials and resources. I went ahead and put my ESL scenario up here so that I would remind myself that I'm working with an intermediate student in my classroom. Remember, you can put notes like in terms of this is day 2 of 5, this would be in February, and so on and so forth. I put notes to the side about what I'm doing in terms of my English language learner support. You don't have to do that. That's just for you guys since I'm not with you. Notice I'm highlighting all the support that I am giving. I want you to do the same thing. See that I have the blue highlights all the way throughout the entire lesson. I want you guys to do that as well. If it's not throughout the entire lesson, your intermediate ELL is not going to understand the content and language you want her to. See how in-depth my lesson plan is? Yours should be the same way. I've included my sentence stems. I've included my questions. I've included a wrap-up. I've included a narration of what I'm going to do. Now, yours doesn't necessarily have to be a whole page, but if all you're writing is about a third of this page, I promise you, you have not written out enough stuff. I've attached my visuals and graphic support on this so that it's all in one document for you. I actually want you to separate yours. Your lesson plan goes to one Dropbox. Your graphic and visual support goes to the next Dropbox. So here are the anchor charts that I would have in class for foreshadow and predict and sequence. I would also give the students a copy of these to glue in their notebook. That is one visual support that I have. Another visual support that I have is this table where we're picking out foreshadowing evidence, we're making a prediction, and then confirming our predictions. That is my second graphic support. And then I also found, I don't know if you've read The Lottery. If you haven't, it's a really good short story. I highly recommend it. I found a graphic novel, and I put it on I was able to open it on my Kindle, on my iPad, and I just took screenshots of that I can then share with the students, and we can work on sequencing with the illustrations as I read it aloud. So I've included a set of illustrations from the graphic novel, my anchor charts, and my graphic organizer. I have 3, you only need 1. Okay, so your assignments for week 10 are to write a lesson plan with your group that has graphic supports, and you also want to make that graphic support. Prior to submitting those to the drop boxes, I would like to meet with you on Wednesday, April 1st. You can schedule a conference time with me on my booked in website. If you click this link, it will take you here and it will show you the slots that I have available. If I don't have enough time slots available, just let me know and I can make some more. I only really need to meet with you for about 5 to 10 minutes to kind of go over anything that you had trouble with and make sure you're doing the assignment to meet my expectations so that you get a good score on it. So that's all for week 10. If you have any questions in the meantime, shoot me an email or send me a text. And remember to wash your hands. I'll see you next video. Bye.